The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network.
Paul gives a great presentation, kind of building off of everything you just said. And I've seen you deliver portions of it at the New England Healthcare Engineers Society. He's delivered it here with B.I. Lahey, and I kind of call it the your anatomy class, where Paul, in very simple terms, right, in dealing with nurses, clinicians, doctors, C-suite people, CFOs, you kind of break your building apart, and I call it the anatomy. You turn this hospital building into a human person, and you analogize for people who aren't facilities people and don't speak your language. You turn parts of the building into parts of the body that's understandable. Can you talk a little bit about that and talk about how you break this massive acute care building apart and put it into human terms so people understand, and so you can advocate for money, and so you can put the need on the table and have them make the decision?
I think, for years, and certainly through engineering books and everything else, you learn about, there's an analogy to a human body. Right? I look at building automation. All right, there's your brain.
So building automation is the brain.
That's an easy connection, and certainly when we, as I spoke about, the steamship, everything was manual. It was a high pressure steamship, and everything, was just done manually. And I transitioned from there to a new AC ship. AC electricity with building automation. This was an unattended engine room. We could take an engine room, and at night, after, let's say, 10 o'clock at night, there's nobody in the engine room until, 7 o'clock in the morning. People were stunned. They were like, how the hell could you do this? And we saw a transformation of people as they came on, and they were making a transition to the newer ships. There were people that would stay up. Like, we would rotate. So, okay, when I said to you it was an unattended engine room, there was somebody that was on watch. That person was basically kind of sleeping on top of his bed. And if an alarm went off, he had to be down there, and he had to be down there within 3 to 4 minutes and acknowledge the alarm and then address it. And then there were safeguards that were built in that would automatically shut it down, but whatever. So, there would be engineers that had come from the old steam plant. They were like, you get up in the morning and say, hey Frank, how was last night? Asking basically how many alarms did you get? Oh, jeez, I kept going down all night long just because I thought something was wrong. Well, why? Because I wasn't getting any alarms. Frank, that's the way it's supposed to work. So anyway, but it's through those days, it was Frank, and I'm even trying to explain it to Frank. Frank, these are making decisions for us, on a circuit board. This is automation. This is the way it's supposed to work.
It sounds like the first time, when you have your first kid, and you bring them home for the first time, it's your first child.
Yeah.
And you might not have had. I don't know if you guys have the walkie-talkie. We just have the walkie-talkie. We didn't have my kids are old enough where they didn't have everything. We just have a simple one. But you go in just to check on them and make sure they're breathing.
Yeah.
And that lasts a while.
Yeah.
And you can't sleep. It sounds very, very similar. I'm not hearing anything. I got to go look. There's got to be something wrong. No, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly. But anyway, it was about, the decision making. I said, we make these decisions all day long, and we understand it. They've just now put this into a computer.
Yeah.
And they've helped eliminate a lot of those things that are going to happen automatically, but they will alert us to the fact that something's going on.
Yeah.
So that was an easy one. And then another one was certainly through whether it was steamships, steam propulsion, or diesel propulsion, or reciprocating engines, or gas turbines. The main thing, my main career was mostly, with reciprocating engines as the main driver, and it was basically you lose lube. Lube oil was your pumping blood through your veins. That stops, you're dead. That engine's dead, and And that's, we would kind of, talk about that a little bit. So that was another connection.
So what's that connection?
Within
In
the
the hospital,
hospital,
yeah.
in the hospital, I used it as, because when we looked at some piping systems, let me back up just a little bit. When I first got to, let's just say, this particular hospital, and it immediately began my assessment. All right, what am I looking at? Do I have the resiliency? Do I have an N+1? Where are my weak spots? What are the problem areas? And what is it that I'm never able to get true control of? And so it's kind of peeling back an onion, trying to lay out a master plan. And certainly with the engineer that I ended up having, who worked with me, he was phenomenal. And he was somebody actually that would be there, because at that time I was working 14, 16 hours a day. Like at night, I would actually end up going and start to pop ceiling tiles to go ahead and trace certain things out. I said, hey, I got to make sure that
This is when you're starting working 16 hours because
Yes.
you're assessing your building.
I'm completely assessing.
You call the building your what? I cheated on that one because I've seen your presentation. The patient.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, sorry. I'm ahead of the task.
So, I lost my train of thought.
Above ceiling tiles.
Oh yeah, so I was out, tracing, tracing systems, and because of some of the behaviors of what the things were going on, and I was trying to understand. Some of these things don't make any sense, or maybe it says it's this system, but it's not this system. Somebody cross-tied these over the years, or there's been a piping change, and then you find out and you kind of unearth some of the bad behaviors that had taken place over the the 30+ years that it was in operation, before. For whatever reasons, they were either bad behaviors or there were decisions that were actually made, or there was actually a project that was actually in place that, hey, this is how we're going to run the system. With the best of intentions, but it didn't work out well.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of systems that had actually, been sacrificed. So in uncovering these things, one of the things was a big, some of our chilled water lines. Our chilled water lines, I had found that they used to have this crossover system that they used to take the chilled water, and in the winters they would get free cooling by going directly from the cooling towers and then supplying those places that needed extra cooling in the middle of the winter, like the ORs or the data center, and they'd slurry over. But I was like, oh, you can't do that. These are closed-loop systems. They're going to ruin your piping. Certainly in this particular town, it's one of the worst in the state as far as how bad the water is. So anyway, it was destructive. So I ended up looking at it. We cut these things out. We went through these major shutdowns within the first year and got rid of that, and then made sure that they were completely separated, two different systems. And then we started to clean them up. But when we did open them up, we had like this much mud coming out of them, just oozing out of the pipes. And it was pretty bad. So those were my veins. So I had taken a few pictures of that.
I was going to ask you that.
And helped explain to later in the presentation what effects these have. And so there was a few other things that we had. That
Did it work?
Some other sewage.
Did it work?
This will work. So there was actually, I was trying to get to a certain point. I was like, here's enough of my information. And certainly from an engineer's perspective, we're actually, kind of trained to go, okay, this is X, this is what it is over here, this is what it does, and then this is how much it's going to cost, and, in plain speak. Well, I can't make that connection, because you're going to sit there and it's just going to be a number, and your eyes are going to glaze over. Well, what I had realized in another hospital, it was before, it was after Spalding, I realized how effective photos were. I could have a very good conversation with you and me and just talk about it, and then I can explain. And maybe you would give me enough time to go ahead and spend 20 minutes to a half an hour saying exactly what this system does, what its effect is going to be, and it's going to affect your income to the hospital. As soon as I brought a picture in, I was amazed at how quickly you saw the need and how much I could frame this with, because I could now take your brain and give you an image where I couldn't do that verbally, because I'm speaking through from an engineer's perspective. And it was just such an invaluable tool that I started to actually, any capital that I did put up, I had a photo that went with it. And I didn't even have to translate it. But it was a very effective tool. And then, but when I did come down to Burlington, I actually had said, how do I convey all of this? Because I've done it. I evaluated the roof. I evaluated the electrical system. I evaluated the building automation system and how effective each one of these were.
Is the electrical system part of the brain too?
Oh, your nervous system.
Okay.
So
the electrical is nervous.
Is more about your nervous system and your muscles. So what I had done was I had said, okay, how do I compete against? I need a lot of money. How do I compete against? I know what my rules, the other rules and regulations that are going to be, all asking for this, to come out of the same amount of money, that same bucket. So I said, the only way that I'm going to do it is there's a business model that these guys are looking at, and the second one is patients. I said, well, wait a minute. This is my patient.
This building.
I said, this building is, then I said, okay, but wait a minute. This looks like it's from two different perspectives. Your patient so-and-so. What does this place look like to you? And what does it mean to you? Well, it means when you walk in the front of the building, your expectations are it's going to be a doctor with a big smile on his face, and the nurses are going to be very supportive, and it's all going to be around here. I've got a nice clean bed, and I'm going to have a beautiful outcome, and it's right here. That's, when they walk in and they see the emblem of the institution, that's what that's what they see. I come in from the back of the hospital, and I don't see that, here's my series of doctors. I see my staff, my engineering staff that need to go out there and they need to do all of these things and touch all these pieces of equipment. And if they don't do it, they don't do it effectively, I am not going to be able to effectively provide the environment, a safe and healthy environment, being a positive pressure room, 20 air changes an hour in an OR, with the humidity, between 30 and 60%, and everything is controlled. Great, and the temperatures are just marvelous. I have 1.2 million square feet of a building, and how do I manage that? Oh, Jesus, I can't do that with my automation system because I have no feedback. I have a little tube, and I showed what that, I showed an image of what that is all this pneumatic tubing that was going out, but I said the only problem is I have no idea whether it was successfully got to that. That's why we need to get to DDC, and that's a lot of money to transition from the pneumatic to DDC. And we've been able to transition it, I think I'm on the last section of the hospital to finally complete that. But that's always an unfunded, aspect to it. But
because what you're going, these are things beyond your PMs, your work order, your normal working capital. This is above and beyond your example above. So nobody's even seen them, so nobody knows it exists.
No.
So you're truly coming up with unfunded projects.
And there was, and then we looked at I said, I've got to replace the roof. I did an analysis. I had the company come in, and I actually had them do ultrasound and infrared imaging of our roofs. And I basically said, this is, right now, our roof is like a swimming pool.
Yeah,
I said,
imaging.
this, and I showed them the image. I said, this is what it is. I said, you have to think of this as a patient's skin. And I showed a picture of a cut. And
so the exterior is the skin.
Is the exterior of the building is the skin. And I mean, they all got it, and I was amazed. I got some very positive feedback. I didn't think I would be I was nervous as hell to give it. I was like, oh, geez, I don't know how this is going to work, or how effective it would be. But I had to give it in front of the entire administration and the doctors. And by touching the the skin, the building, the pneumatic tube or the building automation, the pumping systems, which is the veins, which is the sewage system, which I had to cut up entire floors to go ahead and fix piping. And I have images of the floors taken out. Actually, they were taken out of the ED because the pipes had collapsed. They were so low. They were. I can't remember what else, but there was a number of other things. But basically, if you want just as you want your patient to survive, you, Dr. So and so, I have a patient, and I had an AED.
Okay.
Excuse me. In my ready to come out, and I had it come out. I said, just as you want your patients to survive, are you ready to save my patient?
Wow.
And I held the AED there.
How was that? What was that? That's like a lawyer at the end of a law.
Yeah.
That's pretty emphatic.
Yeah. And,
that's another trick. Use your AED.
So
people respond to that.
They did actually. A number of doctors actually said, would you mind if you took me around to some of our mechanical spaces? And I gave a few tours.
When's the last time anybody's ever go see your mechanical spaces? Yeah. That's how you know it's effective.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I've done that with with leaderships. I think you need to go to these spaces because it's amazing to me. And maybe it's because of what my world was, what my training was. I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
There's not a place that I haven't been. And I have an expectation of myself to go see it.
Yeah.
It's amazing that some people have been there for like 20 years and they only know a route to come in of X, floor through the X entrance, and to get to their office. And there may be, maybe 2 or 3 other particular places that they know a direct route to get to. Other than that, they have never been anywhere else.
That's great. Yeah.
And some people are even in some of our own businesses, or in the facilities departments. I'm going, you got to get your ass off of a chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to be out there. You need to understand. In fact, it's my expectation that you see something. If somebody's coming to you to tell something, you want to get your ass out there and your eyes on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So. We got the brain, we got the skin, we got the nervous system, we got the veins. Any other analogy? Your hospital patient building to physical body. Any others that you use?
Which is the electrical system, which was the muscle control. How much power did you need? And just kind of like to pull it in and out of muscles, but. This is not really a new idea. I've seen it in a number of different, maybe mentioned it in a number of different books. As I was going through college, there was like 1 or 2 that had mentioned it. So I needed an effective way, and I don't get me wrong. I did not know what the success of that was going to be. I was still, I was like, Jesus. This is my spreadsheet. This is what I was focused on.
Yeah.
And then it was like, how am I going to make that connection to them? And then certainly working with the, engineer that I was working with, it was a blast. And certainly he loved it as soon as I started to talk about things like that. And I know that he's actually gone out and used the presentation, with other people.
You did a portion of it at the Healthcare Engineers Conference last year on that panel. You referenced it a couple of times. It's powerful. You did. Remember, you were 1 of 4 up there. All right. Well, my guest, Paul, anything we have not covered? Anything I haven't asked you? I'm left to ask. Are you glad you made the transition to healthcare?
Oh, yeah.
If you had to do it again, even with all that, even the state today, it's very difficult. Funds, staff, all of the issues that everybody across the country has. You would still make the same transition?
Oh yeah, I would absolutely. Certainly I loved everything that I've been able to get my hands into. I think it was challenging enough. It's a unique field, and I don't know how you communicate, and I don't know how you find the younger people. I truly don't, and this is something that not only I've talked about many times, but I talk about it with on the NEHE's board, and I've talked about it back when I was president, and we're still trying to make a connection. How do we bring those people in?
Yeah.
Because how do you find that person that, if you were to tell me this is where I was going to end up being, I would have said, you're crazy, back then. How do I make that connection, as a young student? But how do you find that person that's going to end up having that energy, in the desire to have a number of things, because healthcare certainly does. The challenges are having multiple things in the year and having a whole regulatory base that's around you, that I have to meet all of these things to make sure that these are met in order to make these successful and land properly.
You came from a very regulated environment, as you said. How did you find the transition into the Joint Commission world?
I can tell you that I was confronted with a number of... Oh, that happens to me.
Apple, I have no idea why or how.
Sometimes
It just talks to you.
So I can say that I was confronted a number of times as I was trying to make my way around, because I had those introductions, but then it was like, hey, look, go find out about this Joint Commission. I said, can somebody tell me about this Joint Commission stuff that I'm supposed to...
Did you have anybody internally to help?
I didn't. I had to go blind off at the street, and I kind of went around to a few people, and it was like, oh, you'll never get in. You'll never get into this place. I said, I'm just trying to understand about what the rules and regulations are that you need to go ahead and meet. They said, listen, you see all these books right here? And he pointed to them, and I said, well, you have to go by all of these. I said, I know, but I've had to do this in my own job. I mean,
Yeah.
I had to build ships. I had to build them to certain specifications. I have the United States Coast Guard that I had to build to. Then I had to be approved by American Bureau of Shipping. And then I had to go ahead around to all of these places around the world that we were under their regulations, their state, either federal, their countries, regulations, or our state's regulations. When I was in the oil tanker business, and certainly running up to Alaska, and back from Valdez to Seattle, we had people with binoculars that were watching the color of our smoke to see how long that may, turn from one color to another.
Huh.
And if it went more than 3 minutes, they were picking up a phone, and we had bodies down there saying, hey, something's wrong with your plant. You need to explain this.
Yeah.
Excuse me? Well, you have to understand what the regulations, that the threats that are on each end of any one of our decision-making, strings, right? I have to have this in the back of my mind at all times. How do we meet those? How do we meet intents? Because it's not just do we meet them, how do we prove that we meet them?
Yeah.
And that's through paperwork. And the fact that, okay, we're in the oil tanker business, we had, DNV. So DNV was also another regulatory body that came on and not only watched us, but they had to make sure that we complied. We do what you say, say what you mean what you say, prove it, right? So that's, and DNV was actually here. DNV was actually created in the merchant field, which I didn't know that at the time. But they came
ISO
from
makes sense,
ISO 9000.
Right? ISO 9000.
Right. So we all went under ISO 9000 and had to comply with those, which means that there's policies and procedures that you have written that only adhere to you, that you are going to write, you are going to administer it, and you are going to prove that this is administered and complied with.
So how did you figure it out in the hospital when the guy said to you, "You're not going to learn it. You have all these books"? What did you just go off on your own? So did you? So what did you do in the hospital? Did you had this guy saying you're never going to learn it? You got all these binders. You don't know. What did you do? You just went somewhere else to figure it out?
I went to somebody else, and I had tried to find out back then to look online. There wasn't an awful lot of information. I didn't probably know the correct routes to find that out in the early days. And this is up 20 years ago. And fortunately, one of the very first guys that had actually interviewed me ended up saying, "Hey, I want you here." And as soon as I got into the field, I asked to go to the ASHE. It was an association of ASHE Association in American Society of Healthcare Engineers, and went to their boot camp to try to understand this. Then I went to Joint Commission boot camp, because I said when I went in, I said, I need to know this. This is a void that I can't afford to not understand.
Yeah.
And my leadership understood that, and I went to that. And then from there, it was actually through BEs and ASHE that it was. Those seemed to be places where I could find the solution of how I met that. You know what I mean? So number one, it was a networking, a group, but it was also give me the tools to do this. How do I meet this? Because my impression of, hey, how did I do this? I went out there and I did it. We did it, and here's we wrote down what we did. Well, they want to see certain verbiage that's there, that certain checkoffs and things like that. This was 20 years ago, but it was like, okay, I don't understand what it is that you mean. We didn't have those things. As far as the that complete documentation, exact documentation that they're looking for. Those were the places that I kind of really, all right, now I have an idea of how to go ahead and do that. Meet the intents.
I've known them for 20 years. So my guest, Paul Cantrell, Vice President, Planning, Design, Construction, Beth Israel Lahey Health. We've covered from the ocean to the land and everything in between. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's fabulous. Thank you.
Paul has great stories. We can't put them all on camera, though. Anyways, this is Peter Martin from Healthcare Facilities Network. As always, thank you for watching. Paul, thanks again.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.